Another weekend of championship fixtures over and done with, so let's round up lucky round number 13. Starting off on Friday night down at the Kenny, it finished Luton 1, West Brom 1, and to be honest, this was a result and a pair of performances that I don't think either team particularly needed, wanted. I don't think this particularly benefits either of these teams, and I'm going to be brutally honest, up until Josh Madger's wonderful bit of magic at the end of the first half, which put West Brom in front, that was borderline the worst half of football I think I've ever watched in the Championship. You know, it was two teams that were clearly completely devoid of confidence, two teams struggling to go forward. It was painful to watch at times, and in the end, it was always going to be a mistake or a moment of quality that decided it, and that's kind of what happened in both halves. You know, Josh Madger with a brilliant back heel put West Brom in front, and I think that was their third touch in the opposition's box. Mental. And then Luton got one back on the hour with a brilliant finish from Chong, and that was Luton's only real bit of quality too. So I don't think either side can really take that much positives from either of the performances, to be honest, and I think either would have been delighted to have got out of this game with all 3 points, but the fact that both have come out with just the one doesn't really help either. West Brom are now winless in 8 with 5 draws in there, Luton 1 win in 7. Yeah, this wasn't a great night for either of them. Blackburn 0, Sheffield United 2. Well, I'm sorry, Sheffield United, I really am. I always predict the Sheffield United score, which, you know, if you watch these roundups frequently, I've dubbed 2-0 the Sheffield United score, and I didn't this week. I backed Blackburn, and I apologise terribly for that, because Sheffield United went and did Sheffield United, and they've gotten over their mini blip really well. You know, the results to Leeds and Boro, they've gotten over that very, very well. And I think, yeah, getting back to Bramall Lane, fine, you expect them to get back to winning ways there. But to go away from home and win comfortably is a huge step back in the right direction. And to do it at Blackburn as well is probably even more impressive, because Blackburn, this was their first defeat at Ewood Park all season. They have been fantastic at home. This is their first defeat. And they were limited to pretty much nothing. They didn't have a single shot on target, Blackburn. That's how one-sided it was. It's 1 win in 6 for Blackburn, and they've only scored twice in that time. Not a good spell for them, and maybe they're starting to just drop away now following that really good start. But Sheffield United are back to doing what they do best, and as I said earlier in the season, in the earlier couple of weeks, they are just consistently getting results, and they're getting wins and clean sheets, and they just look really, really solid. Oxford 1, Swansea 2. I've got some apologising to do to all the Swans out there as well, because I backed Oxford to win this game. This is maybe a bigger win than it maybe looks on the surface for Swansea, just because of recent form. Obviously, they've not just scored here, they've scored twice! Twice! It's mental! Unbelievable scenes here for Swansea, but it's a huge win for them, you know. And listen, Oxford were still competitive in this game. They still could have maybe nicked a draw at the end, but yeah, I wouldn't say there's too much of a reason to be worried just yet about Oxford, but they have quietly slid down the table a little bit here. They're now winless in 8. They have picked up 5 draws in there, so I wouldn't say they're losing that many games, which is why I'm not too alarmed by Oxford. But yeah, they've stopped winning matches, and they've now lost for the first time at home, so going to be very important for how they react to that, especially in their next home game. But a brilliant away win for Swansea. One they should be getting on paper, really, but they were much better here. They were very creative. 5 shots on target from 16, a really good XG, and they converted their chances too. So here's hoping for them. It's the start of more to come. Stoke 2, Derby 1. What a weird game this was. I mean, again, Derby flattering to deceive on the road. Again, didn't create all that much. They were gifted the own goal from Johansson on the 68th minute. It was hilarious, to be honest with you. Ben Gibson heading it back. The goalkeeper out of position, has to sort of struggle back to try and keep it out, but he can't. But thankfully for Stoke, that didn't prevent them from getting the result. Tom Cannon put away a very good penalty on the 9th minute. Bit controversial as to whether it was a penalty, I'm going to be absolutely honest. Cannon sort of left his leg in there a little bit, but you could say that's clever play from the centre forward, who's really finding his feet down at the Bet365 now. And Ben Gibson, to be fair, the Teesside lad, born and bred Boro, he made up for the error with the own goal by scoring the winner on the 82nd minute. So, yeah, I'm not going to get too overly excited by Stoke. It is good to see them get back to winning ways, but this is a home game they should be winning, in all honesty. Derby's away form still flatters to deceive. Cardiff 2, Norwich 1. Another home win for Cardiff, and it looked like a defeat until the very, very death. What scenes at the end. Borja scored because, of course, he did. That's what he does. It was another screamer from outside the box. I'm glad Boro aren't the only team he's doing that to this season. But worryingly for Norwich, they couldn't convert that to a win. Welcome to our world. Cardiff with a fantastic comeback on the 89th and the 93rd minute. What scenes at the end to see them turn this game around, and it's just another really big moment for Omar Rizza and his team. And again, I bang the drum that he needs to be given the job permanently. It's 6 unbeaten for Cardiff. They've won their last 4 home games on the bounce. Everything's looking really good for them now. They're progressing up the table. They look a different team from what they did at the start of the season. So give him the job. Cardiff are on the march. Norwich, again, it's a difficult one with Norwich. They're so good at home, but you do just worry their away form might just let them down a little bit this season and stop them getting to where they should be. This is definitely a result that has gotten away from them. They should have been coming away from this with at least a point. Hull 1, Pompey 1. I don't know if this is a good result for either team, to be honest with you. I mean, Hull took the lead early on, and I think from the highlights it looked like Pompey's goalkeeper was massively to thank for keeping the game at 1-0 at times in the first half. But Pompey's reaction looked really, really good in the second half, to be honest. They got themselves level pretty quickly in the second half, and by the looks of it, should have maybe won it in the second half. So I think Pompey, just given where they are, can take quite a few positives from this result. It's a point on the road. They fought back really well. They showed good character, could have won it. So again, can they build on that? We will see. Hull, though, winless in 5. And that really brief purple patch they had of wins and goals seems like a distant memory, and they've sort of regressed to where they were previously. So nothing to worry about for them, but I think they are very much levelling out as just a mid-table team. But Pompey need to build on this and back it up next time out. Leeds 3, Plymouth 0. Oh boy. Let me read out the stats to you guys. Now I'm not gonna blow my own trumpet here, but in my prediction video before the weekend, I did say Leeds 3, Plymouth 0. And I did say we could be in for the most one-sided game this season. Let me read some stats out for you guys here. Leeds, 78 possession to Plymouth's 22. Leeds, XG, 1.86 to Plymouth's 0. Flat 0. Nothing. 23 shots to 0. 7 on target to 0. 2 big chances to 0. Plymouth had only 122 accurate passes in the whole game. They didn't have any accurate crosses. It's safe to say this was just so one-sided, leagues apart. I mean, it's a game that Leeds should be winning. There's no surprise to the result here, but even I was shocked to see it be this one-sided. But nevertheless, Leeds march on, dare I say, even though I hate that chant with a passion. They're unbeaten in 8 now and are right on Sunderland's tail, and I've said this since the start. I might sound like a broken record, but Leeds are the team. I just feel like once they get going, they will be like a runaway train. Plymouth, as we've kept saying over and over again, need to improve their away form massively. They've lost 6 of their 7 away games this season, and they've only scored once on the road. It's starting to really, really cost them. It's putting a hell of a lot of pressure on their home form, because if that doesn't prop them up, they could be in a really, really deep relegation battle this season. Boro 0, Coventry 3. For God's sake. Oh dear. I don't really want to cover this again. Listen, I did a half an hour breakdown of this game, so if you really want to see my true in-depth feelings and my ranty feelings, please go and check out my Project Boro review of this game. But bottom line is, Boro, more of the same, stupid individual errors, mistakes, letting us down, terrible sending off from Hayden Hackney, a deserved second yellow card, puts us on the back foot, although interestingly, Boro were better with 10 than what we were with 11. Coventry started the game so much better than us, and the red card was inconsequential. Coventry should have been 1 or 2 up before Boro even went a man down. They had 2 goals that were disallowed for offside. It was, a goal was coming regardless of how many men Boro had on the pitch. And even though I thought we did respectably well with 10 men, the result kind of felt inevitable. Coventry scored their opening 2 goals at the perfect time. One just before the half, the second just when Boro was starting to put a bit of pressure on. It's, back-to-back wins for Coventry. And as the old saying goes, when the clocks go back, Coventry go forward. And I said in all my previews, it would be typical if they did it against Boro, and shock, they've done it against Boro. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Coventry go on a run now and really start to climb the table. As for Boro, it's more of the same. It's the same cycle of mediocrity and self-destruction that if it doesn't end soon, this team ain't going to make the playoffs. Preston 1, Bristol City 3. Another result I will hold my hands up and say I got deadly wrong, mostly down to the home form of one and the away form of the other. But I think I've underestimated Bristol City here, I'm going to be honest. I will get the controversial opening goal out the way for any Preston fans watching. It was dicey, wasn't it? Hirakawa looked to handle the ball around the goalkeeper for Bristol City's opener. Obviously, that changes the game massively. But then you could argue Greenwood obviously got Preston back in the game with a really good free kick. Bristol City still were able to take the game away from them second half. And they, you could say, massively clinical, Bristol City, 3 shots on target, 3 goals, maybe the perfect away performance, but I think they're starting to quietly go nicely under the radar, Bristol City. They're unbeaten in 8, quietly doing okay, picking a few points up away from home now as well, doing really well at Ashton Gate. They're going under the radar. Maybe that's a good thing sometimes for a team, whereas Preston, first defeat at home under Paul Heckingbottom, but even though they're down to 20th, I think, I'm still not overly concerned about them. QPR 0, Sunderland 0. A good point for QPR, you have to say. I mean, I was penning this as like Leeds Plymouth, another really one-sided game. But, once again, there is a huge degree of, effect with the result due to the red card to Joe Bellingham in the second half, which did look like a red card, to be honest. Studs were up. It was quite a high challenge, and he will be a miss for them. But you know what? To last 58 minutes against this Sunderland team and keep it to 0-0, QPR can take immense positives from that, and they might even see it as a missed opportunity that they didn't go on and win the game second half with a man advantage. So maybe there's a positive to getting a point against Sunderland, but I think there might even still be a degree of frustration for QPR that they didn't convert this into a win, because they're now winless in 9 and desperately need a win. For Sunderland, you know what? It's points dropped. Bellingham sending off's disappointing, but what I will say, and I think this is what separates the top teams from the rest, and this is maybe where I can make a Boro-Sunderland comparison at this moment in time. Boro lose a man, albeit a lot earlier in the game. We're unable to even survive the next 20 minutes without conceding, and we lose the game. Sunderland go a man down, they see it out for a point, and I think that's what I've been saying about them, Burnley, Leeds at times. If you can't win a game, you've got to at least not lose it. And that's the one big positive I think Sunderland can take away from this, is that they didn't win the game, but they didn't lose it. They're still, they keep an unbeaten run going. They still take a point, and that's still a huge positive. I think that's what separates the nearly teams that aren't quite good enough to the teams that at the moment are. Sheffield Wednesday 2, Watford 6. 6. Now again, I find myself apologising once more because I didn't back Watford at all, down to their away form. But if there was one way of getting your away form in the league up and running, it's probably scoring 6 goals. And this, I literally had to stop and check my phone when I heard this result on the radio on the drive home from the game on Saturday. I mean, what a emphatic away result this is for Watford. And 2 of the goals were penalties. I think Sheffield Wednesday need to be a little bit disappointed with the penalties. The first one you could say was a tad harsh. The second was just silly. But yeah, Watford were brilliant here. An XG of 4.1. Just very creative, very clinical. By or scoring 4, it's an unbelievable away performance. And all Watford need to do is start being better on the road, and they might have a big chance of playoffs because their home form's absolutely fine, and this might set the fire underneath their away form. And if it does, some of the playoff teams better watch out. Whereas for Sheffield Wednesday, this sums up their season, really. You know, they maybe put a positive few results together, and then they go and ship 6 at home, which in any case is quite unacceptable, to be honest with you, and defensively not good enough. So it just, continues this narrative that Sheffield Wednesday are just unbelievably inconsistent and at times defensively really, really poor. And finally, Millwall 1, Burnley 0, a fantastic win for Millwall. And I said in my prediction video, the Den is the kind of place where this sort of result can happen. And it did. Burnley's fantastic 9-game unbeaten run comes to an end. And before I talk about Burnley, you've got to credit Millwall, albeit they've won quite a few 1-0ers of late. They are now unbeaten in 5, and they've won their last 3 in a row. And if you recall, a couple of weeks back, I did say how crazy it was that I was shocked that Millwall were in 20th, and then suddenly a few weeks later they were up there in 10th or whatever. And I said, all this league takes and all this league needs for a team is to just put a small run together and your position is transformed. And without looking at the league table in depth just yet, Millwall have went from 20th to 7th. It's bonkers, but it's a fantastic win for them at the Den. It's what can happen at that ground. As for Burnley, well, it's a Scott Parker masterclass, isn't it? Listen, they've been on a fantastic run, but this is the sort of result and performance that always has me questioning Burnley and especially Scott Parker. They have been unbeaten in the last 9, but they've only scored 4 in their last 7. And in typical Scott Parker fashion, they had 65% possession in this game, but they only mustered 8 shots and 1 on target in the whole game with an XG of 0.17. For me, that's just not good enough or effective enough for a team that you can take seriously for automatic promotion. And talking of that, let's look at the league table. So that defeat for Burnley drops them down to 4th. And I keep saying about a lot of teams, it doesn't take much to put a winning run together and for that to transform your season and to fire you up the league table. But equally, it doesn't take many sort of unconvincing performances, a little bit of a winless run, and suddenly you could drop right out of it again. It's that tight. But yeah, it's exciting at the front, to see Leeds close the gap on Sunderland, Sheffield United just right behind them. And I've always said, as I say, Leeds are probably the team I expect to run away with it, but Sunderland are the only team who've had any sort of consistency. You could argue Leeds have probably got that now too, and Sheffield United as well. Barring the little blip, you could maybe look at that top 3. For me, that top 3 looks like it could be there for the whole season. They just look like they've just got something else that the rest of the teams don't have. I'm not convinced by Burnley. Watford are so in and out. West Brom are on a bit of a bad run. So again, I say this, that there are playoff spots there for the taking from 3rd downwards, if you ask me, or from 4th downwards. So it's who can take them, and it keeps changing every single week. But Watford and West Brom are in there currently, and then all of a sudden, Millwall and Bristol City enter the sort of chasing pack with the likes of Blackburn, Norwich and Boro dropping anxiously into mid-table. And I said this especially about Boro in my in-depth review of the Coventry defeat. All it's going to take are a few teams like a Millwall to win 3 in a row, or any of the teams in the top 6 currently to put on a winning run, and a lot of these teams that are lingering in mid-table will be dropped in the dust and will be in the rearview mirror, and that's the worry for teams like Boro and maybe Norwich as well. Going into the bottom half then, good to see Coventry finally get their season going in November as they often do. They'll probably be on the eve of the playoffs before long if they keep on going, but as we drop down, Stoke and Cardiff get themselves away from danger. And as I say, maybe without quite realising, you start to worry a little bit about Oxford. I'm not too sure, slipping slowly towards that bottom end of the table. Preston as well are still lingering around, although I have a feeling they'll be okay. Luton as well just can't escape the wrong end of the table, can you? But to be fair, at this point, I can't see 3 worse teams in the league than the 3 are in the bottom 3 at the moment. It's there's not a team in there that doesn't deserve to be. Pompey, QPR and Plymouth, I think, are rightfully the bottom 3. It's a case of who can pull themselves out and who gets dragged in. There's no one outside the drop zone who I'm massively worried about at the moment, and I wouldn't be surprised if the bottom three currently is the bottom three come the end of the season, but we'll see how things pan out. But that's my roundup of the Championship for this weekend. We're probably not going to have time to predict the midweek round of games, but we will be back to review them on Thursday, and there's actually a game on Thursday between Burnley and Luton, I think, or Burnley and West Brom. I can't recall who, weirdly. Don't know why there's a game on Thursday, but we won't have time to predict that round of games either because there's a game on flipping Thursday. So yeah, it'll be a review of the midweek games. It'll be another roundup of the weekend games after that, and suddenly we're into another depressing, horrid international break. Although if you're a Boro fan like me, might actually start looking forward to a 2-week break from your football club. So let me know if that's the case in the comment section below, as well as your thoughts on your team this weekend. Do subscribe for much more Championship content to come, and like the videos. It really helps me out. But until the next one, guys, do take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.